The crack was not loud. That is what stays with you. You imagine it would be an explosion, a thunderclap of ice giving way beneath your boots. But it was quiet, a soft, dry snap, like a single knuckle popping in an empty room. And then the world beneath you simply ceased to exist. For one full second, there was nothing. No ground, no sound, no breath. Just that absolute, nauseating absence of gravity that your body has no framework to process. Your stomach rose into your throat. Your arms reached for something, anything, and found only cold air rushing past at speed. The glacier walls were a blue blur on either side, smooth as polished glass, offering nothing. No ledge, no rope, nothing to grab. Then the impact came. It did not feel like hitting a wall. It felt like the wall hit you, with the full intention of ending you. Your right side took the first blow, and you heard and felt your arm shatter simultaneously. A wet, grinding crack that traveled up through your shoulder and into your skull. You spun. You hit the opposite wall with your back, and 3 ribs gave way in a single breath, a sound like green wood splitting. Then you were falling again, and the walls were narrowing, and you hit them again and again, bouncing between the ice like something broken and discarded, until the light above you, that narrow slot of white sky, was just a thin line, impossibly far away, and then you stopped. Welcome to the human limit. I am your host, and what you just experienced in those few seconds of reading, that free fall, that shattering impact, that sudden, terrible stillness, is exactly what one man lived inside a Himalayan glacier, alone, with no one on Earth who knew where he was. If you have never subscribed to this channel, right now is the moment. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a like on this video, because what we are about to walk through together is not just a survival story. It is a masterclass in what the human body and the human will can endure before they finally let go. Or choose not to. Stay with me. He had been climbing for 11 days. His name does not matter for this story. What matters is what he was. Experienced, methodical, the kind of mountaineer who had spent 2 decades learning that the Himalayas do not forgive arrogance. He had summited peaks that most people only see in photographs. He understood glacial terrain. He knew about crevasses, those deep fractures in the ice that open as a glacier moves, that hide beneath a thin skim of wind-blown snow, invisible until you are standing directly on top of them. He knew all of this, and the glacier took him anyway. It was morning, just past 7, and the light was that particular Himalayan gold that makes every surface look solid and safe. He was crossing a section he had crossed the day before. Same route, same bearing. He was not being careless. He was being exactly as careful as he always was. The snow beneath his left boot held. The snow beneath his right boot did not. In the fraction of a second between his weight shifting and the surface giving way, his brain registered what was happening. That is the cruelest part. He knew. He had just enough time to know before the world opened up and swallowed him. 70 feet, 20 meters. In free fall, that takes approximately 2 seconds. 2 seconds during which the narrow walls of the crevasse flashed past him, and he tried to self-arrest with his ice axe, dragging it against the walls, finding no purchase on ice that had been polished smooth by years of glacial compression. He spun once. He hit the right wall with his shoulder, and his arm took the full rotational force, the humerus snapping clean. He did not scream. There was not enough time. He hit the left wall with his rib cage, and the ribs on his left side cracked, and then the ones on his right, and then he was tumbling, and the light above was getting smaller, and the walls were getting closer, and then, with a final, gut-emptying impact, he stopped. He was alive. For a moment, he did not know this for certain. He lay on his back on a surface that he could not yet see or understand, and his entire body was screaming in a language he had never heard before. Not pain exactly, something larger than pain. Every nerve in his torso was firing simultaneously, and the signal was so overwhelming that his brain simply could not process it. He was conscious, but he was not present. He was somewhere slightly outside himself, watching. Then he breathed, and the breath broke him back into his body like a key turning in a lock. The ribs. The moment his lungs expanded, the fractured ribs shifted, and the pain that arrived was a different kind entirely. Sharp, white, specific, and absolutely unambiguous. He heard himself make a sound, not a word, just a sound. Animal and involuntary. He tried to breathe again, shallower this time, and the world sharpened around him. He was lying on something roughly 2 feet wide. He could feel its edges without moving. He turned his head very slowly to the right. The wall of the crevasse was close enough to touch. It was deep blue, not the blue of sky or sea, but the blue of compressed ice that has not seen sunlight in 10,000 years. Ancient blue. Cold and perfect and absolutely indifferent. He could see the layers in it, centuries stacked like pages in a book, and it was beautiful in the way that only things which might kill you can be beautiful. He turned his head to the left, the same wall, the same ancient blue, 3 feet away. He was in a slot barely wide enough to hold him. He needed to know what was broken. He ran through it the way they train you to in wilderness medicine, systematically, starting at the top. His head was intact. He could move his neck. His left arm responded, fingers moving on command. His right arm did not. It lay at his side at an angle that arms do not naturally achieve, and when he focused his attention on it, the signal that came back was hot and confused, the tissue around the fracture already swelling, the bone ends separated. He would have no use of that arm. None. His torso. He breathed again. The ribs on both sides were damaged. Breathing would cost him. Every inhalation would be a negotiation. He did not know yet that he had fractured 15 bones in total, that his spleen was bleeding slowly into his abdominal cavity, that the bruising forming around his kidneys would turn his torso the color of a storm sky. He only knew what he could feel, and what he could feel was enough. He was badly, seriously, possibly fatally injured. He was at the bottom of a crevasse in the Himalayas. No one had seen him fall. He let that sink in. He gave himself exactly those few seconds to feel the full weight of it, to let his mind go to the dark place and look at it directly. Because climbers who survive these situations report the same thing. The moment you refuse to look at reality clearly is the moment you start making fatal decisions. He looked at it. He counted it up. No rescue team would find him in time. Even if his camp partner reported him missing by nightfall, a search would not begin until morning. By morning, he would have been at the bottom of a 20-meter ice shaft for over 12 hours. The temperature down here was already below -15 Celsius. His core temperature was dropping. Hypothermia in these conditions arrives within 2 to 4 hours. After that, his muscles would stop cooperating. His mind would start to soften and dream. He looked up. Above him, the crevasse walls rose in a near-vertical column. At the very top, that impossibly distant line of white sky, the opening, 70 feet up. The walls were not straight. They leaned slightly inward, which meant the climb would require him to push outward against the ice as he ascended, overhanging in places, fighting gravity at every inch. With one arm. With broken ribs that made every breath a punishment. With internal bleeding he could feel, but not see. He looked down. Beneath the ice bridge he was lying on, there was nothing, no bottom. Just a descent into perfect darkness, the kind of darkness that has no floor, that goes down until the concept of down becomes meaningless. He shifted his weight slightly to test the bridge. It held, for now. If you are watching this and the cold has already reached you through the screen, if you can feel the narrowness of those walls and the darkness below, this is the moment. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to The Human Limit, because what this man decided to do next is something that should be witnessed by every person who has ever wondered what they are truly capable of. He decided to climb. Not because he was certain he would make it. He was not. The rational part of his mind, the part that had survived 2 decades of mountaineering by respecting mathematics, told him the odds were against him. But the other part, the part that existed below calculation, the part that was simply and furiously alive. That part would not accept lying down on a bridge of ice to die. He rolled onto his left side, slowly, with the care of a man diffusing something. The ribs screamed. He breathed through it in short, controlled sips of air. He found his ice axe still attached to his wrist by its leash, dragged it up into his left hand. He tested the grip. It held. He got to his knees. This took 4 minutes. Later, when he tried to describe it, he said it was the hardest 4 minutes of the entire ordeal. Getting from lying to kneeling, with broken ribs and one useless arm, in a space barely wide enough to turn around, was a problem that required his complete intellectual and physical capacity. He had to think through each movement before executing it, because any mistake, any slip, meant falling off the bridge into the void below. He made it to his knees. He placed the pick of his ice axe against the wall. He swung it, and the pick bit into the ice with a sound like a gunshot in that narrow space. He pulled. He drove his crampons against the wall, found purchase, rose 6 inches. 6 inches. He rested. He breathed. The ribs shifted, and the pain peaked and rolled back like a wave. He swung the axe again. This is how it went. 6 inches at a time, sometimes 4. Sometimes, when the ice was harder or his strength momentarily failed, 2. He would swing the axe, set the pick, pull with every gram of strength his left arm possessed, push with his legs against the wall, gain a few inches, press himself against the ice to rest, breathe through the ribs, and then do it again. His broken right arm was the worst part of the climb. It hung at his side, and as he moved, it moved with him, the bone ends grinding against each other with a sensation that occupied its own separate register of horror. He tried to hold it still by pressing it against his body, but the wall was not always close enough, and sometimes the arm swung free, and the movement sent a signal up through his shoulder that blanked his vision momentarily and made him grip the axe with a desperation that was entirely involuntary. At roughly 15 feet, he entered the overhang section. The walls angled inward above him, which meant he was no longer climbing a vertical surface. He was climbing a surface that leaned out over him, requiring him to hold his entire body weight on the pick of one axe planted above his head, while his feet searched for holds on ice that was nearly horizontal. His left shoulder began to burn with a deep structural fatigue that frightened him more than the broken arm. He was running out of strength in the one limb that mattered. He stopped. He pressed himself into the ice and gave himself 30 seconds to do nothing but breathe and let the lactic acid clear from the muscle. 30 seconds, he told himself. Then we go again. The cold was working on him now in a way he could feel, the fingers of his left hand losing their sharpness, the sensation in his feet becoming muffled and unreliable. Hypothermia does not arrive as a single moment. It creeps in from the edges. It softens the borders of things. His mind was beginning to drift. At 20 feet, he started to hallucinate at the edges of his vision. Just flickers, a suggestion of movement in his peripheral field. He ignored it and focused on the ice directly in front of his face, on the individual crystals, on the pick of the axe, on the next 6 inches. At 30 feet, he began to talk to himself. Not coherently, just sounds at first, half words, the verbal equivalent of keeping a light on in a dark house. Then full sentences. He talked about his daughter. He talked about a restaurant he liked in Kathmandu. He talked about the specific smell of coffee in the morning at base camp. He talked to keep his mind from going somewhere it could not come back from. At 45 feet, he looked up and saw the slot of sky above him, and could not tell if it was closer or if his eyes were failing him. It seemed to be in the same place it had always been, infinity wearing the face of the sky. He drove the axe into the ice and screamed, not from pain, from something else, from the refusal. And the scream echoed down the crevasse and came back to him changed, and he drove the axe again and climbed another 6 inches. At 60 feet, his left hand stopped feeling the axe handle. He could see his fingers wrapped around it. He could tell by the tension in his forearm that he was gripping it. But the sensory signal had been cut by the cold, and he was climbing by sight and faith alone. watching his hand rather than feeling it, trusting that the connection was still there even when his nerves said otherwise. 10 feet. He could see the texture of the snow at the lip of the crevasse. He could see individual crystals. He drove the axe one final time into the ice just below the rim, and it bit deep, and he pulled, and his left arm shook with the effort, the muscle past exhaustion, and into something beyond exhaustion that had no name, and he pulled again, and his chest reached the lip, and he hooked his left elbow over the edge, and he pulled, and he rolled. He rolled out of the crevasse and onto the surface of the glacier. He lay on his back in the snow, and the sunlight hit him like a wall. After the blue dark of the crevasse, the Himalayan morning was violent in its brightness, and he could not look at it directly, and he did not care, and he lay there making sounds that were not words, looking at a sky that was the same pale, cold blue as the ice walls that had held him, and he was on the right side of it. He did not stand up. He could not stand up. He crawled. It took him 2 hours to cover the distance back to camp, a distance he had walked in 15 minutes that morning. He crawled on his left forearm and his knees, dragging his right arm, stopping every few minutes to rest his forehead against the snow and breathe through the ribs in those shallow, careful sips. The snow was soft and the sun was warming it, and he focused on the texture of it against his skin and on the specific direction of camp, and he moved. When his climbing partner saw him crawling across the glacier, he did not immediately understand what he was seeing. He said later that his brain refused to interpret it. Then he ran. In the hospital in Kathmandu, the doctors counted the damage. 15 fractures, internal bleeding from a lacerated spleen, frostbite on 3 fingers of his left hand, hypothermia, and a right humerus that had been shattered so completely that it required 3 surgeries and a titanium plate to reconstruct. He had climbed 70 feet of overhanging ice in that condition, with one arm, alone. Here's what I want you to understand about stories like this. We come to them looking for something. Sometimes we tell ourselves we are looking for inspiration, or for evidence that the human body is more capable than we know. And those things are true. But I think we are also looking for something harder to name. We are looking for the line between the person who makes it and the person who does not. We want to know where it is so we can know which side of it we are on. And the honest answer is that the line is not drawn by physical capability. It is not drawn by training or experience or equipment. It is drawn and redrawn moment by moment by the decision to take one more breath, to swing the axe one more time, to crawl one more foot toward camp. He did not survive because he was stronger than the mountain. He survived because he refused, in the most fundamental and wordless way possible, to stop. That is the human limit, not the ceiling, the floor. The absolute lowest point from which a person can still choose to rise. This is the human limit. Subscribe, because we are just getting started.